Claire, here's your vampire story. It was my first night driving a taxi. It was late and there was not a lot of people on the street. I was about to go home, but I was held by a man in a dark street. He wore a dark-colored coat, collars up, and his hat was pulled low over his eyes, as if he didn't want anyone to see his face. He got into the back of my cab, and I pulled off and started driving down the street. My passenger in back leaned forward and tapped me on the shoulder. I screamed and almost lost control of the cab, nearly hit a bus, drove up on the curb, and stopped just inches from a large plate glass window. I don't know why. I guess he spooked me. His touch was so cold, and he smelled. He smelled real bad, like something decaying, like a dead animal. For a few minutes, everything was silent in the cab. Then, still shaking, I said, "I'm sorry, but you scared the daylights out of me." I stared at him in the rearview mirror. His head was a silhouette against the back window. I couldn't see his eyes, just a black, shadowy shape where his face should be. My passenger apologized, saying that he didn't realize a tap on the shoulder could be so scary. No, I said, it's all my fault. This is my first day driving a cab. For the last 25 years, I've driven a hearse. Where was it you wanted to go? The man in the back just said, North Cemetery. I drove him there in silence. When we got there, he got out of the cab and he told me to wait. And if you don't wait, you'll be sorry, he said. Well, I didn't feel very comfortable, but I wanted the money, so I waited. After a while, he came back, and strange as it may sound, he seemed to be wiping something from his hands. As he slouched down in the shadows of my back seat, the man just said, South Cemetery. So we drove, and when we got there, the same thing happened again. He told me to wait for him. I was feeling more and more uncomfortable, but I waited. I wondered what he could be doing in the cemetery so late at night. What business could he have there? He returned to the car, brushing something from his clothes. I didn't ask him any questions. He returned to the darkness of the back seat and seemed to be wiping something from his mouth. When he was done, he just said, East Cemetery. Although very frightened, I was determined to get my money. My curiosity began to get the better of me, and despite my fears, I was determined to see what he was doing. So this time, I followed him in the dark cemetery. I tiptoed behind him, stepping softly through the long grass and the muck. I watched him as he walked silently among the headstones. He seemed to be looking for one in particular. He came to a fresh grave. Then he fell to his knees and used his hands to scrape and dig at the earth until he got down to the coffin. I was barely breathing, afraid he would hear me. I was terrified, but I couldn't run away. My legs felt like a dead weight. I was rooted to the spot. I saw him open the coffin lid, and as he bent over the coffin, I could see inside. I caught a glimpse of the sunken features of a fresh corpse lying in the open coffin. I was so terrified, I couldn't move in the darkness. Then the man stood up. Perhaps he heard me breathing. Maybe he heard the gravel crunch underneath my shoes. He came straight towards me, quickly, almost running, but he didn't seem like running. It was as if he was gliding fast and silent over the grass. In seconds, he was upon me, grasping my shirt and pulling my face closer to his. I smelled his terrible decaying breath. I saw something dark and sticky dribbling from his mouth. I stuttered, "Are you a vampire?" "Yes," he screamed as he sank his fangs into my neck. The end.